So today I have some more ghost stories for you from S.E. Saucer's spooky series. He has that whole database online of folk tales from around, like mostly from America, but other countries too, like Canada and Native Americans. You know, the stories that we used to tell at campfires, but people don't do that anymore. Like, why do people just not remember? Or maybe it's like with the internet, people don't really care anymore to like remember stuff. I don't know. Why don't people tell the ghost stories anymore? You tell me. Because I haven't been around a campfire in a while, but yeah, let's get to it. The first story is called The Boo Hag. It's from spooky North Carolina. The Boo Hag. You know how they say some folks are lucky at cards and some are lucky at love? Well, that fit Bobby Henson to a T. He was the best poker player in the county, but somehow he couldn't find himself a bride. Oh, he proposed to several girls, and even got accepted by a few, but they always got cold feet a day or two before the whole wedding, and it was bye-bye Bobby. After the third time, Bobby was mighty discouraged, and his pa felt real sore for him. They worked together in the family grocery store, and Bobby would sometimes sit on top of the pickle barrel and tell his pa all his woes. And his pa told him to hang in there because a nice lady was on her way. Neither of them believed it, but it made both of them feel better to hear it said. Well, the day after their last talk, the old woman who pulled her barge through the swamp to deliver milk and eggs to the grocery store had a long talk with Bobby's pa. Seems she had this daughter who was hankering after a husband with a good steady job, and the old woman thought Bobby would do the job nicely. She suggested they introduce the pair at the next dance, and Bobby's pa agreed. The night of the dance, Bobby's pa insisted that his son dress in his best. Bobby was dragging his feet a little, remembering all those women who played him false and not wanting to go, but his pa dragged him out anyway. Well, the moment Bobby clapped eyes on a dark-eyed, red-lipped girl from the swamp, he was head over heels in love. Her eyes sparkled like the sunlight on the bay. Her skin was as creamy as new milk. Her voice was low and sweet. The pair cuddled and cooed and waltzed the whole night long, and come sunrise, Bobby was all for bringing the new love before the visiting priest who delivered his sermons in the grocery store, since there weren't no church in that vicinity, and getting married right away. Well, the girl was willing to get married, but not by a priest. Let's just go to Beaumont and have the judge marry us, she said to Bobby, and he was so smitten he agreed, though it would have been quicker and easier to just walk a mile down the road to see the priest. But the next evening they were wed, and Bobby brought his pretty bride to the nice little cottage he rented just down the road from the family grocery. It had a nice front porch with a swing, a big bedroom on the second floor, and a big attic with a window that could be made up into a second guest room should his new mother-in-law care to visit from her home in the swamp. After fixing him a nice dinner, Bobby's new bride sat a while in the rocking chair near their bed while Bobby yawned and watched her fondly. She cuddled under the blanket and knitted and hummed, and Bobby's eyes grew heavy. He didn't wake up until early morning, when his new bride crept into bed all hot and sweaty and fell asleep at once. When he asked her where she'd been, she wouldn't answer him. Bobby was mighty sore that his bride had snuck out on him on their wedding night. But when she got snappish and her eyes blazed like they did when he questioned her, he grew frightened and backed down. Life took on an odd pattern for Bobby. During the day, everything was perfect. His wife was sweet and pretty and loving. She kept the house sparkling, clean, and cooked him wonderful meals. But each night, she refused to come to bed after supper. Like their wedding night, she sat up singing and rocking and knitting until he was asleep and did not come to bed till just before dawn. She was always sweaty, and cranky when she came to bed and went to sleep before Bobby could question her. Bobby was very confused and upset by this behavior, and finally confided in his pa one morning after opening up the grocery store. Bobby's pa was awful worried. The visiting priest had gone to his next parish, and there was no one that they could consult but the local conjure woman, so he sent Bobby to her with a couple of chickens as a gift. The conjure woman knew all about hoodoo magic and was an excellent herbalist. Local folks went to her when they were sick on account of the doctor lived nigh on 20 miles away. When she heard Bobby's story, she told him to pretend to go to sleep that night and watch what his new bride did. Then he was to come back and tell her everything. Bobby agreed. The next evening, he pretended to fall asleep while his bride rocked and sang in her chair. Then he followed her up to the attic and watched through the crack in the open door as she sat down at the spinning wheel and spun off her skin, leaving only pulsing red muscles and blue veins. She was a terrifying sight, and she sprang through the window and flew away into the night. Bobby ran out to the privy and was sick after he saw her. What was this monster he had married? He was still trembling and in shock when his bride, looking like a normal person again, crept into bed at dawn, and he had trouble behaving normally at breakfast. As soon as he could get away, Bobby ran to the home of the conjure woman and told her about the spinning wheel and the terrible skinless creature who flew away from his attic. "A boo-hag," the conjure woman said at once. "You married a boo-hag." "What's a boo-hag?" asked Bobby. "A boo-hag is a witch and a shapeshifter," said the conjure woman. "She lures men into her trap and then delivers them to her boo-daddy, who eats their flesh and gnaws their bones. And that's what she'll do to you if you don't get rid of her first." The conjure woman told Bobby to get himself some blue paint. As soon as the boo-hag left the house that night, he was to spread blue paint on every window frame and every door frame and make sure it was 2 coats thick. A boo-hag couldn't fly through a window or door that was painted blue. If she didn't get back into her skin before dawn, she would be trapped without it and be revealed for the monster she was. So he was to leave one tiny window unpainted and keep it open a sliver so the boo-hag could squeeze through. Then he was to fill up her skin with salt and pepper, which would burn her up from the inside out, and Bobby promised to do exactly as the conjure woman said. That night, Bobby lingered over his dinner, looking with sad eyes at the pretty woman sitting opposite him. He knew she was really a monster inside, but it was so nice to have a little wife in his home. He hated like anything to see her go, but he didn't want to get eaten by Boo Daddy, and that was his fate if she stayed. So he went up to their bedroom and pretended to fall asleep while she rocked and sang and knitted. Then he followed her quietly upstairs and put salt and pepper into her skin after her ugly, red-muscled, blue-veined figure had flown out the window to her boo daddy. He spent the rest of the night painting over every door and window frame with blue paint, leaving just one small unpainted window open in the cellar. He nailed it up so that it would open no further than a crack, just as the conjure woman instructed him. Then he hid himself behind a large chest of drawers up in the attic to wait for the boo hag. Just before dawn, the boo hag came flying up to the attic window. As soon as she touched the blue frame, she gave a shriek of pain and rage. Bobby listened as she flew around the house, testing each window and door, and howling like a banshee when it burned her skinless hands. Then she found the little window in the cellar, and he heard the thump as she landed beside it, followed by a painful whimpering sound as she squeezed and squeezed herself through the narrow opening, her skinless red muscles and blue veins tearing painfully against the rough wood. The boo hag ran up 3 flights of stairs into the attic and squeezed into her skin as fast as she could. She just barely got it on when the first light of dawn shone over the horizon. And that was when the salt and pepper did the work, burning the boo hag's body from the inside out. With a scream of agony, she flung it off. But it was too late. She exploded into tiny pieces right over the swamp, and the alligators had them a mighty feast of cooked boo hag for breakfast that morning. So Bobby was once again without a wife, but bachelorhood looked much better to him after that, and he never went looking for a wife again. Of course, after he made a pile of money in oil, the girl started chasing him, but that's another story. Okay, so that story was called The Boo Hag from spooky North Carolina, and I guess the moral was, be happy with what you got, or really get to know someone before you marry them, because, I mean, these days, divorce is becoming more and more common. More marriages are ending in divorce, and so that's just people, they don't care about getting to know the person. They just look, oh, is this person pretty or good looking enough for me? But once they get to know them, I guess, like, long engagements is the answer. Long engagements. Really make sure you actually like someone. You want to spend the rest of your life with them. So the next ghost story is called Vengeance. It's an Asian American story from California. It's called Vengeance. When the samurai warrior Kane first came to California from Tokyo, he brought his new wife, the beautiful Ishii. She was an ideal wife, gentle, attentive, and a wonderful cook. Kane was the envy of his new neighbors, but he was a proud man. When a wealthy family moved into the neighborhood, Kane cast his eye upon their lovely daughter, Aiko, and desired her. In his mind, Ishii was second best, so Kane plotted to rid himself of his wife, so he could woo and win the fair Aiko. On a stormy night on the way home from a great banquet, Kane pushed Ishii over the cliff and into the bay. No one heard her scream through the howling wind. No one suspected foul play when Kane came rushing back to the banquet hall, shouting for help because his poor wife had slipped and fallen over the cliff. Kane acted the part of the bereaved husband to perfection. He gave Ishii a splendid funeral. It wasn't until he was alone in his house that Cain relaxed and drank to his success. Outside, the wind whipped against the house, making the walls rattle and shake. A stray breeze swept through the sleeping room with a whisper, "Vengeance! Vengeance!" Cain sat up and blinked as a dark figure stepped into the room. Its long, tangled black hair hung over the dirty, blood-stained kimono. Its face was crushed and broken, with one eyeball hanging from the socket. The ghost of Ishi reached out a broken hand toward her husband, smiling through the shattered remains of her teeth. "Vengeance," she whispered. "Vengeance." Cain screamed in terror, leapt out of the window, and ran to a neighbor's house. Mistaking his fear for grief, the neighbors took him in and insisted he stay with them during the first weeks of his bereavement. A month passed as Cain waited for Ishi's ghost to reappear, but she'd vanished. Relieved, Cain decided it was safe to bring Aiko and her family to see his home. As he escorted Aiko's parents around the garden, he whispered in his ear, he felt a hand on his arm. Cain turned around and found himself facing a beautiful Ishi, who kissed him and whispered in his ear, "Vengeance." Laughing, Ishi danced away, waving to Aiko and her parents as she passed. Aiko glared at her in jealous rage. Fearing that Aiko might end the betrothal, Cain pressed forward with his suit, arranging for a grand engagement feast to prove his devotion. Friends, neighbors, and family came to the banquet hall to laugh and toast over food and wine. Cain was very pleased with his success, but when he looked across the hall, he saw the ghost of beautiful young Ishi walk into the room and stand merely in the corner. He paused mid-sentence and stared in horror as she laughed and began to change. Her body twisted and broke before Cain's eyes, her face collapsing inward and bleeding, her black hair tangling, her eyeball popping out of its socket. "Vengeance!" she whispered. "No, no!" Cain shouted. Around him, Aiko, her parents, and the guests stared. None of them could see the ghost. As Ishi drifted out of the door, Cain followed, vowing she would haunt him no more. The ghost drifted along the cliff path with Cain running after her, shouting and cursing. Suddenly the ghost stopped at the place where Cain had pushed her. She turned to face Cain and started to grow, her crushed body bloody and dirty, her eyeball swaying, her shattered teeth gleaming in the moonlight. Bloody and dirty, her eyeball swaying. "Vengeance!" she screamed and lunged at Cain. The samurai stepped backward, face contorting in fear. His foot slipped suddenly on the loose earth, and he plunged backward over the edge of the cliff, his body fatally smashing into the rocks far below. That same night, a terrible storm beat against Cain's house. Lightning hit the roof, and the house burned to the ground. Neighbors claimed they could hear a voice in the wind saying one word over and over: "Vengeance." So that one was called Vengeance from California. And I guess the moral of that story was be happy with what you got, or yeah, like he already had a wife that was a good cook and gentle and really good at cleaning and everything. But he wanted Aiko, and I don't know, something they're gonna have to be appreciated from afar. They're like a bird song. It's pretty, but it shouldn't be captured. Like, that's why I guess putting birds in cages isn't a good thing to do. Like, you know, birds are free spirits and stuff. The last story is called Black Aggie from Spooky Maryland. I think this one's true or based on truth. So Black Aggie. When Felix Agnes put up the life-size shrouded bronze statue of a grieving angel seated on a pedestal in the Agnes family plot in the Druid Ridge Cemetery, he had no idea what he had started. The statue was a rather eerie figure by day, frozen in a moment of grief and terrible pain. At night, the figure was almost unbelievably creepy, the shroud over its head obscuring the face until you were up close to it. There was a living air about the grieving angel, as if its arms could really reach out and grab you if you weren't careful. It didn't take long for rumors to sweep through the town and surrounding countryside. They said that the statue, nicknamed Black Aggie, was haunted by the spirit of a mistreated wife who lay beneath her feet. The statue's eyes would glow red at the stroke of midnight, and any living person who returned the statue's gaze would instantly be struck blind. Any pregnant woman who passed through her shadow would miscarry. If you sat on her lap at night, the statue would come to life and crush you to death in her dark embrace. If you spoke Black Aggie's name 3 times at midnight in front of a dark mirror, the evil angel would appear and pull you down to hell. They also said that spirits of the dead would rise from the graves on dark nights to gather around the statue at night. People began visiting the cemetery just to see the statue, and it was then that the local fraternity decided to make the statue of grief part of their initiation rites. Black Aggie sitting for candidates for membership had to spend the night crouched beneath the statue with their backs to the grave of General Agnes became popular. One dark night, 2 fraternity members accompanied a new hopeful to the cemetery and watched while he took his place underneath the creepy statue. The clouds had obscured the moon that night, and the whole area surrounding the dark statue was filled with a sense of anger and malice. It felt as if a storm were brewing in that part of the cemetery, and to their chagrin, the 2 fraternity members noticed that gray shadows seemed to be clustering around the body of the frightened fraternity candidate crouching in front of the statue. What had been a funny initiation rite suddenly took on an air of danger. One of the fraternity brothers stepped forward in alarm to call out to the initiate. As he did, the statue above the boy stirred ominously. The 2 fraternity brothers froze in shock as the shrouded head turned toward the new candidate. They saw the gleam of glowing red eyes beneath the concealing hood as the statue's arms reached out toward the cowering boy. With shouts of alarm, the fraternity brothers leapt forward to rescue the new initiate, but it was too late. The initiate gave one horrified yell, and then his body disappeared into the embrace of the dark angel. The fraternity brothers skidded to a halt as the statue thoughtfully rested its glowing eyes upon them. With gasps of terror, the boys fled from the cemetery before the statue could grab them too. Hearing the screams, a night watchman hurried to the Agnes plot. To his chagrin, he discovered the body of a young man lying at the foot of the statue. The young man had apparently died of fright. The disruption caused by the statue grew so acute that the Agnes family finally donated it to the Smithsonian Museum in Washington, D.C. The grieving angel sat for many years in storage, there never again to plague the citizens visiting the Druid Hill Park Cemetery. Okay, that was Black Aggie from Spooky Maryland, and the moral from that story, I think, I don't think that had moral. I guess if you could think of a moral, maybe tell me what you think it is in the comments. So I hope you enjoyed these three ghost stories as much as me, because it's really sad that these days people just, I don't know, we don't tell them that around campfires anymore. Like, why? I'd like to know, why do you guys think no one tells ghost stories at campfires anymore? I don't know, now there's like creepypastas online, and I mean, everything's online now, so. Thanks for watching. I guess subscribe if you want, like if you want, share, whatever. Okay, keep thinking outside the box. Enjoy your time alone. Get outside. Definitely, like, we need vitamin D, because that's helps the immune system function. Because I mean, if you're staying inside because you're afraid of the virus, like, you're never getting vitamin D, then like your immune system's not gonna work. Or exercise, like, that's good for your immune system. Exercise. Check out some acupressure points, because a lot of those are good for the immune system. Do squats, jumping jacks, just walk, lift heavy things, but don't hurt yourself. Yeah, thanks for watching. Goodbye, YouTube.